Here we have the Bree6 from GS Music. It's the second in their lineup, following on from the E7 that I demoed a few months ago. This is a 6-voice polyphonic synth with a fully analog signal path. It's got 1 VCO per voice, offering a sawtooth, a pulse, plus a sub. These all go through a 4-pole resonant low-pass filter, and it's all modulated by 2 ADSR envelopes and an LFO with 5 different shapes that can take us up to 100 Hz. At the end of the analog signal path, we've got a digital chorus and delay, which adds some lovely textures, but they can be fully bypassed if you want. We can save 512 presets, 8 banks containing 8 sounds in each of the 8 sub-banks. Don't worry, that'll become very clear later on. It's also got MPE compatibility and is a class-compliant USB MIDI device with all the knobs and buttons sending and receiving MIDI CC, so you can record all your tweaks in your DAW. We've also got a full-sized 5-pin MIDI DIN in, out and through. But what all those specs don't tell you is quite how well put together this whole thing is. If you can see here, each of these are screwed on. They're all on metal shafts bolted onto the chassis. It really is a tough feeling little thing. And another thing the specs can't tell you is quite how good these GS Music synths sound. The E7 absolutely blew me away. So this is like a cut down version of it. It hasn't got 2 voices, it's got a single voice, and it's all pretty simple. It's almost a knob per function from the front panel. And if you're used to programming synths, you'll know exactly how to use this within playing it for a few minutes, literally. And I'd have thought that whoever's gonna buy this, they are £989 or something like that at Signal Sounds at the minute in the UK, so they're not a cheap synth at all. So I doubt they're going to be anyone's first synth. I think it's more like somebody's going to buy this because of what it sounds like, and you want to get away from working in the DAW perhaps. But this sounds absolutely marvelous. So what I'm going to do is just play some sounds on it rather than going through all the functions, because that wouldn't take long at all. And to me, this is all about these wonderful VCOs. But just to quickly show you how it all works, we've got the sawtooth, got a square, we've got both. Use the shift button for anything that's got a white background. So there's the sub, put the sub on. So this is just the sub now. Turn the sub off, shift, turn it off. So let's go back to the sawtooth and just start creating some tones. So here we've got the initial patch, about as simple as you can get. Drop the cutoff, add some resonance and some filter modulation. Have the decay. Go down an octave. And the first thing I noticed when I started playing this was quite how wide that envelope range is when you've got the envelope generator modulation on full, but the cutoff down, bring the decay down, turn the resonance up. Cutoff comes from all the way above 20 kilohertz right down to 0. And that's how Roland got all those classic tones where you got a nice bright transient dropping down to some really low thuddy bass tones, but quickly. So that punches through the mix and still got weight. It sounds like a really simple tone, that, because it is, but not every synth can do that. Let's make that nice and long again. In fact, let's make a pad with it, shall we? Set the filter modulation off for now. Now on a 2 oscillator synth, this is where you add the second oscillator, you detune it and get a nice thick tone. But on the single oscillator synths like the Juno 106, the 6-60, the Poly6, you got a chorus or an ensemble. So down here, we've got the effects. Bring that chorus in. So lovely that, isn't it? You can see a nice little graphic down there on that LED. So a super simple tone, but it just sounds nice. That chorus is lovely, isn't it? Not bad for a single oscillator, that, is it? Yeah, it's got something about that tone. That's lovely, isn't it? And just to show you, it is only 6 voices. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we get voice stealing on the 7. But let's go and take a look at this pulse now. Starting off with a nice clean square then. Come down an octave. Nice and thick. You will notice there, though, I'm going down the octave on the keyboard. There's no octave selector on the oscillator. It does have a nice tone, that. Let's add some PWM, so LFO to PWM. That's got some depth to it, that, hasn't it? Yeah, I like that. We can also go through 0 with that. So if we increase the amount, put it over there somewhere. So you can do those fake delay sort of things. Quite cool, and we're also not stuck to that triangle. If we look down here, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different wave shapes, and we can use any of those for the PWM. Just gives us loads of extra things to play with. Lots of synths, especially vintage synths, have the PWM locked to a triangle. Should really have that in mono from doing bass sounds. Maybe try some punchier bass. So let's take the PWM off. Cut off down again, modulation up. Again, nice thick woody tone in there, isn't there? Let's turn this into one of my favourite tones. So we add some chorus. A nice little bass tone from a 106 that I like to play around with. And this does it really nicely. We can't modulate the pulse width with an envelope though, which is a nice little trick when you do sort of electric bass and piano type tones, but not really important. Not something I actually use a lot, but just worth noting maybe that it's not on there. But let's try a pad, put it back into poly mode, put into poly mono for now. And knock it up a couple of octaves. Yeah, great that, isn't it? Let's try and do something with the sub. So we'll go back to a sort of synthy bass tone. Let's take the delay off for now. We'll have the Sawtooth and the sub. You can't change the levels of those, they're either on or off, but you can have the sub on its own. If we hit this again, we've got square and saw or neither, so this is just the sub. If you just wanted to make sure you got a perfect square. But let's put the Sawtooth back in and have a little play with this delay. Get something nice and bright and sparkly in there. There we go. On the delay, we've only got control of the delay time and the feedback. When it's turned all the way anti-clockwise, it's super fast. It's milliseconds, so you can hardly hear it at its fastest. And then that goes all the way around clockwise to about a second. You can't sync this to anything. There's no way you can sync it to MIDI or to clock. There's no tempo controls anywhere on the synth. But I have to say, I always seem to find more complex and more interesting delay times when I'm doing it freeform like this. I never sync my Moog for the delay either. Cutoff doesn't work on the delay because the delay line comes after the cutoff. The top two rows are basically the analog circuitry and the effects come after that. The feedback doesn't go into space echo territory. It doesn't go into self-oscillation. It's quite well tamed. We do have keyboard tracking of the filter as well. So let's go back to a simple Sawtooth. We'll put the filter on keyboard tracking. Take all this off. Turn the resonance up. So you've got those organ tones in there. But one thing I did notice with this is that if we turn the release up, the filter sort of dies away after. So I was trying to do my standard sort of voodoo ray tone. So it's something like that, but it's got a little bit of release on it. And if I add the release, you can hear the filter just fading out slightly. It gives it a bit of life, actually. It makes it feel like it's not too overly controlled. But if you wanted something that lingered with that filter, so. But yeah, you can hear it doing something slightly weird at the end there. I do quite like that though. It's what they call character, isn't it? What else is there to look at? Should we take a look at the voice modes actually? So let's bring up a pad again. Let's create, I should really have saved one of these pads while I've been making it. Let's take the sub off. What are we doing? A bit of this. So we're coming over to poly stereo mode. It's panning the voices left and right. Obviously, we've got them panned hard left and hard right for the video, but you don't have to have them panned hard left and hard right. But if I just play through the voices, you can hear where they are on the stereo field. Also then, so poly mode, it's not in stereo. Mono mode we've played with. Last note priority, and then we got unison mode, and the unison mode on this is pretty cool actually. So let's add some beef to it. Let's make it into a sort of PWM. We got the Sawtooth on there as well. You can see there the wave shapes as well. So nice, but we can also detune it using this big detune knob here. And then we've got this little secret ingredient in here. If we go into shift and we come to the preset menu, down here we've got something called unison interval. So if we turn that up, we get an interval in the unison, so we can have like a fifth. Well, let's go to a major third. I don't think I've seen that on any other synth. We've also got portamento here as well. If you put it onto poly, we've got poly portamento, so. So all sorts of mad effects you can get from that. Also worth knowing is the detune works when you're not in unison mode. So I was a bit staggered at one point when I was trying to work out why the whole thing was out of tune, and it's because of this. So you can make it sound a little bit more vintage if you want to, but I don't find you have to be honest. It doesn't really need that slop. It's got that tone already. What else is that? If we press Shift and Control, we're into this controller menu. You've got all sorts of settings in here for the mod wheel, velocity, aftertouch, and the MPE Y-axis. It's fixed on the filter cutoff or the amp level, but you can change the amounts that it does that. You can't get negative on these. If you wanted, for example, let's go to aftertouch to the filter cutoff. If you wanted that to reduce the cutoff, you can't go negative. Global settings, all the stuff you'd expect, transpose, tuning, LED intensity, knob mode, you can jump, or you can pass through or relative or ignore. Let's put it back to jump. Knob smoothing's a bit like a slew for when you're twisting a knob. It just sort of slows down the signal, sort of. To load a patch, hit bank, and then we can just type in whichever patch we want. There's up to 8 main banks with 8 sub banks and 8 patches in each. If we go to, I don't know, random one, then we can just hit the patch number, but we can go across to the different banks and select like that. It's really quite simple. In here, I think it's filled, as far as I can tell, whoops, up until 642, is it? Or was it 652? Yeah, so it's filled up to 652. After that, we've just got init patches. I've not done the maths, but that's an awful lot of presets in here. And to save something, Shift and Save, type the patch number, 734, for example, and then twist the knob, and then move across using these buttons here. Very simple, done. So there you have it, the Bree6 from GS MUSIC. It's a lovely 6-voice single oscillator synth. I wouldn't compare it really to a 106, a 6 or a 60 because they're all DCOs, and this does have much more of a warmer quality. It's a bit more like a Jupiter 4, if anything. It's got a really nice quality to it. Didn't think about my polysynth though. It doesn't have loads of functions in there. There's things missing that you might want, like the noise, for example, or PWM modulation using the envelope. A few little bits and bobs like that. But we do have NPE compatibility. It has got 512 presets, or room for 512 presets on board. And within this controller menu, there's lots more things you can do with this than you can with a vintage synth. So it's a much more modern proposition than any of my old vintage synths. It's a lot cheaper than any of my old vintage synths. It's a lot smaller than any of my old vintage synths. And it sounds just as good, if not better in a lot of cases, than a lot of my vintage synths. So it's a nice little unit. It just feels nice. It feels well built. It feels like there's passion gone into making it. It's not super cheap. It's nearly £1,000. But if you are in the market for something nice that you're not going to worry about breaking so much, or you're not going to worry that it's going to be broken when you turn it on, which is the most important thing about those vintage synths. Yeah, take a look at this. I'm a big fan of it. I'm a big fan of the GS MUSIC sound. I just think everything they do, or everything they've done, there's only the 2 synths I've heard, I suppose, but they both sound absolutely lovely. Nice company, nice guy as well. Met him over in Superbooth. I hope that was of some use to somebody somewhere. If it was, please do subscribe, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon, all that sort of stuff. Check out my starskycar.com website. I've got patches on there for the E7 if you're interested in those, and loads of other little bits and bobs. But anything you can do to support the channel really massively helps. But most of all, thanks for staying to the very end. I really hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time.